I want a fast yes most of all. My second choice is a fast no.
Yeah.
Because now I can just move on and get you out of my pipeline and I'm done, right? He said, because sometimes those long drawn out yeses, by the time you have all the meetings and, spend all that time and energy for months and months and months, finally get the gig, hell, the margin you make on it almost didn't pay for all the work you did up front, right?
Welcome to Confessions of a Vistage Chair. I'm your host, Ryan Hogan. We have real, behind-the-scenes conversations with Vistage Chairs who share honest stories and practical insights on leadership growth, peer advisory groups, and what actually happens in Vistage meetings. Let's pull back the curtain. All right, so I've known since like 10 minutes ago that this is going to be an incredible conversation just by all the topics that we just covered. Brian, one thing I wanted to talk about like right out of the gate, and it's going to sound like I'm coming out hot. And mostly because like my view on the Air Force is you guys have the best golf courses. Listen, we're on ships, and so we get 3 square meals a day. You guys get 5-star hotels and Michelin star restaurants. But when I was going through your background, the thing that stood out to me is our journeys may be pretty similar. And so I'm gonna make some assumptions here, and then you kind of guide me into how this all went down for you. It looks like you started off enlisted. It looks like you eventually made officer. It looks like you went through some sort of program at the University of Maryland, which we both went to as a part of maybe a program that was a commissioning. Became an officer and then separated at the 15-year mark. So did you enlist? Was that the start of your journey?
First off, thank you for your service, and I have fun with everyone busting on the Air Force from all my other 3 branches all the time. So I just go there myself first just to cut them off usually. So I said I come up with the line that self-deprecating already. But it's funny you say it too though, because when I decided to join the military, it was going to be more of a technology kind of position, and then they were both equal at that time. Now we're talking 1977, so a long time ago. So mainframe computers and all that. But with the Navy, I said, man, I just don't think I'm going to be out at sea for 6 months at a time. It's just not going to do it for me. I'm kind of show me some sunshine, and I don't want to be in some submarine or some battleship or something. So that's the reason I chose the Air Force. Yes, because it was easier. So anyway, that's that. But no, boy, how it all started is my dream was actually to go to University of Michigan. I'm a Wolverines fan, all the sports and stuff, loved it. I was born and raised outside of the Detroit area in Garden City, Michigan, about 15 miles west of Detroit. I was a Wolverine fan. My sisters didn't go to college. They're 2 older sisters, so I was going to be the first one. But, my folks didn't make much money. My dad was a construction guy, a heavy equipment operator, actually. Very proud of that. And my mom really didn't start working until I think I was in 10th grade. So I was going to be the first one to try college, but we were clueless. And back then you didn't have the internet to understand how to do all the scholarships and grants and all that kind of stuff. We had no clue, and I didn't really have a good counselor, to be honest with you. Anyway, I just saw myself. I said, there's no way I'm going to make my mom and dad would have done anything to send me to college. And that was what scared me. I said, no, they're already killing themselves. I'm not playing that game. So I didn't really tell them. I just kind of went and joined the Air Force. So a month after I graduated high school, I didn't even take the summer off. I'm just going, what am I going to do? Just twiddle my thumbs for 3 months waiting? I said, nah, I'm going for it, So yes, I went.
What was that conversation like with when they found out? Were you just like, oh, by the way, and your bags are packed?
Well, it wasn't quite like that. I did after I signed. I said it, and then they were trying to see if we could get out of it. And I said, no, we're not getting out of it. I said, I'm not going to have you guys kill yourselves trying to get me through college, And so, no, I just that's just the way it's going to be, and I'll figure out how to get my college through the services. I thought, nothing ever goes the way you plan it. I thought I was going to go for like 4 years. I didn't. Also found out that I signed after the cutoff for the big, great GI Bill. So I didn't have quite that. Yep. And I said, okay, well, that wasn't a good move. Way to go. But I decided so late to do this. That was part of the problem. And I started taking college courses and stuff, and Anyway, I still was planning on getting out after 4 years, and then maybe finishing school that way or whatever. But none of that worked. And then, including when I was getting ready to get out, I was working on this old mainframe computer called Burroughs. It was a competitor to IBM way back then. And Burroughs World Headquarters was in Detroit, so I figured, hey, I'm going to get out and get a great job, and they'll help me finish the college, whatever the Air Force couldn't do, Or I called, I made one phone call to the Burroughs HR group and said, hey, I'm getting out of service. Been working on computers, Burroughs computers for 4 years. I'm looking to get out. And the guy just said, I'll never forget this. One phone call. He said, son, it's kind of rough out here. We're in a recession. If I were you, I would just stay in for another hitch. I said, oh my God. I hung up the phone. You got to be kidding me, And I didn't even ask anyone else or make sure that was true or anything. I said, if the HR guy at Burroughs, and that's all I know, tells me to stay in, I'm staying in, which was a good move, obviously. So I did. I can zip through the military thing because you can ask, interrupt me anytime.
No. Keep going. I feel like the military thing was pretty foundational.
God, it was everything. So if anyone's ever, any young kids are questioning what to do, and I know things are different now, but still, it gives you discipline and makes you grow up, fast and all that. But so I did move to Denver. I said, well, let me get out of northern Michigan because I was still kind of a weenie, scaredy cat kind of kid. And I was only in northern Michigan, 3 hours drive away. So I said, all right, if I'm staying in, I got to go for it. So let's go check out Colorado. That'd be cool. And they had IBM computers, since the Burroughs guy told me that, things were good. And so I did that. But then I get there, and I don't know, it just seemed like there should be more. And I was always taking on extra jobs and duties because I get bored easily. And after I learned something, it's like, okay, next. And sometimes there wasn't a next unless I took a side job, as the security monitor, I was a training guy or whatever. I would take on extra stuff. Yep. But working this is a missile detection kind of job I was at. Again, no windows or anything, and weird shifts, and one midnight shift. Two captains, I'll never forget these two guys, Captain Doucette and Captain Bain, kept on telling me, Brian, you got the goods. You really should try to look into the officer program here, And I said, hadn't really thought about that, So I did look into it, and I decided, to start taking the classes I needed to actually apply for officer school, and that took a good couple of years. And I'm talking like, Algebra 1 and 2, Calc 1 and 2, Trig, so I'm just like, oh my God. Because it either had to be electrical engineering or comp sci. And so I said, okay, so I'm taking all these courses. Another interesting twist. I mean, I'm a believer in God, and some of these things have happened. There's just no way that, it's just happened. It's not coincidence. So I had one class to go, and my girlfriend and I decided to take, I took 30 days off. For 2 years, I took no vacation because I was doing all these cram courses. Wow. 30-day vacation, scheduled 30-day vacation, and we drove from Colorado, Utah, Arizona, California, Utah, then Nevada, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and back. But we got to the point where it's like, man, I'm getting itchy feet. Let's just get back, So we got back like 5 days early. Well, here's the crazy thing. I get back, and everyone's going, Brian. I go, what? Because I didn't have a page or anything. It was before cell phones. It said, the White House Communications Agency is here interviewing people for jobs, and you were one of the ones they wanted to interview, but they're leaving tomorrow. I said, what? So if I had taken the full 30 days, I would have missed it. So coming back early was a godsend, and I interviewed, and I got it. But one thing I asked them was, this sounds awesome. I mean, crazy job, and I can talk about that in a minute. Advanced communication team, you go in advance so that wherever the president and his staff goes and set up basically a telco wherever you are, and then tear it all down and bring it back. And it's just amazing. But I said, I knew I could get top secret SCI clearance, all that kind of stuff. I said, I'm only one class away from applying for an officer, so this means I would have to stay enlisted for at least 2 more years. And that's what it was. I asked the question. They said, 2 years, then you can apply. I said, cool. So I did it. Unbelievable experiences. Went to Reykjavik and Geneva for the Reagan-Gorbachev summits as part of that team, and just amazing stories and amazing experience. And then when it came time to another funny story, when it came time to apply, just my 2 years plus were up, and I'm going to apply. Well, the program went from 2,000 people a year selected to 200. And I said, oh, what did I do? I said, but surely having the White House com behind me would do the trick. And then again, just these wonderful things have happened to me. I was asked to go down to Atlanta with Admiral Poindexter, who was National Security Advisor at the time. And it was just me and one other guy, and him and his right-hand man, Commander Thompson. We went down there on a moment's notice, and his son was actually graduating from Georgia Tech, but you still had to have capabilities, communication capabilities. So that it was just a mini trip kind of thing with the two of us. And on the way back, I just got the guts to say, Commander, I'm applying for this officer program, and it's squashed down to just 200 slots now. I really could use a letter of recommendation. Do you think the Admiral would do that? And he goes, oh my God, he loves you guys. He knows how much you guys, put up with all the stuff we put you through, like this trip, for instance. And so, he said, yeah, write up something, send it to us, and we'll tweak it and send it back. Of course, whatever I sent him, I don't think I had any one word that was even the same as what I sent. Mine was garbage, But he sent it back. And I said, oh my God, it was like perfect. And I applied and I got accepted, and I was all exciting and everything else. Well, don't you know, like a month or so after being accepted is when the whole Iran-Contra thing blew up. And of course, Dexter and Ollie North and others were involved in all that. And so I'm going, man, that paper probably would have been worth much at that point, so I got in under the wire on that one too, And then just to lay out the rest of it, I mean, my goal then was to go to University of Maryland, get my degree, and it was like two years and change to finish my degree because I'd taken a bunch of courses all along the way, but I still was like 2 years short to get the degree, computer science. So I did that, and my goal was to go back to White House Comm as an officer because you just do that much more on those trips. You're a trip officer for any location. You're in charge of that whole thing. That just seemed very cool to me and was, again, the best job ever. And then, I went to the Pentagon for 3 years. I was only an officer for 3 years. And then in 1992, peace had happened a few years prior with the wall coming down, and they're downsizing the military and asking for volunteers. And they said, well, if you volunteer and get out, here's the package. But if you don't volunteer and we don't get enough volunteers, here's the package. And I said, oh my God, And I don't know. People were telling me, stay in, you've got a great record, blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying, I can't roll the dice on that, I can't do it. So I got out, and sure enough, they didn't get enough officers, and they did have to riff some, including some friends of mine who did roll the dice. So again, blessed. And then on top of that, I ended up falling into the whole internet craze in the 90s. So I would have missed all that if I had stayed in the military. And so everything has worked out. It looks like it's going to be bad, and it ends up being good, right? I mean, so, oh no, I can't believe this is happening. Oh, but this is better, And that's happened to me so many times. I can't tell you enough.
It sounds like this opportunity kind of struck. Like when you were kind of going through the officer program. And by the way, we called it, or we still call it, Seaman to Admiral. We have very similar experiences there. So a couple of years before, it wasn't 2,000 people, but it was probably about 1,000 people they were picking up for something called Seaman to Admiral, Stay 21. And then when I started applying, so it took me 3 tries. When I started applying, it was down to 200, and the pilot spots were even smaller.
Very similar.
And so very, very similar. It's just interesting that like we both got out after 15. Like it sounds like yours was very kind of situational based in what happened when you were going through this. Were you like, I'm a lifer at this point, or were you like, I'll just see what the wind blows?
Was at least 20, if not 25 or 30. I was so into it now, and especially if I got assignments like White House Comm again as an officer, I was all in. So when they told me I had to make a decision and gave me like 3 days to make a decision on my life, I'm going, you've got to be kidding me. And I did the whole, mad, grieving, all that stuff within 2 days, I had to make a tough decision here. But no, I was ticked off, frankly, initially. And then I had just, calm down and get the emotions out of it and say, okay, well, what makes sense? What should I do here, And I got out. But no, I was upset because I really did want to, definitely going to be lifer, 20 minimum is what I would say. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you were going through that transition, were you afraid? Were you anxious, or were you confident? Like, how did you feel after only knowing the military now for 15? And so for people that are listening, like the military like kind of takes care of every aspect of your life. You don't have to worry about job security. Well, I mean, to a certain extent, sometimes things happen and
it's a family
going
though.
through ebbs
It's
and
another
flows,
family. Yeah.
Everything there. And then now you're making this transition after 15 years where the military's been a big part of your life. Were you like, I got this, I know exactly what I'm doing, I've got the degree? Or were you like, what the hell am I going to do now?
I was more like, what the hell am I going to do now? Because of everything you just said, that, I mean, we've heard stories of guys and gals, leaving the military after, 20, 25 years and then, having a heart attack or dying because they just can't function almost, and I just thought, I knew what I was going to miss is that camaraderie. I always played team sports and I love that whole thing. I just had a blast with all the people I always worked for, and you do care about each other. Even now, you talk to somebody, they say, yeah, I was in the Air Force. Oh man, where are you? It's like an immediate bond, and even if it's another branch of the military, it's still a bond. And you start having a discussion, so it's just fantastic. So yeah, to come out of that and go into the commercial world, and I'm going, yeah, what the hell am I going to do? And I'm thinking, okay, so I was starting down the GovCon path actually, and I actually took an offer on the government contracting side of the house, and because I had the clearance and everything, so I thought, well, let's leverage that, and but then I got this call from this company that was doing this crazy datacom stuff called MFS DataNet, and they were involved in, they weren't about the internet yet. It was like a year later where things really blew up. But I said, well, that sounds really interesting. And there was something about, I don't know, maybe at that point it's like, I'd rather not be tied into government, and it was going to pay more. Even with my clearance, it was going to pay more too. Although I found out later, they still did a better job negotiating than I did. But it just sounded more interesting, right? Now it's going to be the leader of this area, and it was a fairly new company, which in some ways made it more scary because here I am coming out of stable to this, and of course, my dad worked for the union really, but they were more like work for one company and your entire life kind of thing. There were pensions and all that. But here I am. So then not only am I getting out of service, and I already signed a deal with this company in the government contracting, then this came along and said, "I'm so sorry, I'm going to do this instead." I mean, I can't even remember how I felt and why I did that, because that was a pretty gutsy move for a guy who grew up with stability. But I did. Just something just told me it sounded right. And the whole internet component, which is where it really took off and went crazy, really didn't hit for another year or so. But the technology that they were doing was bleeding edge, and I mean bleeding edge. And being on the operations side, I felt all the blood, and some was my blood. But I think that's, looking back now, I guess that was part of it. Is just the technology was so out there. I thought it was so cool. I said, let's go for that, So I did.
Huh. Did they know? Like one of the things that I hear about all the time. See, I've been in the Navy for the last 25 years. I'm the commanding officer of a unit out of Spokane, Washington. I'm on the reserve side. So I did 15 years active, and then you and I did something very, very similar. But for me, it's always been entrepreneurship. So it's like Navy entrepreneurship. One of the things that I've heard, one of the hardest things about transitioning out is civilians don't know where to put you, because you've got all this experience, you've got all this leadership, you have all of these things, but they're very hard to translate to the civilian side. And so there becomes this like, well, where in the pecking order, where do we stick these humans? What was that experience?
That was interesting. Even back then they had something called the TAP, the Transition Assistance Program. Yep. And, and they helped a little bit, but you're right. Most companies didn't know how to map the skill sets, but what's interesting is after I got out, they really brought me on, and they worked hard to get me in because of my military service. They said, oh my God, if this guy's done communication stuff with White House Communications Agency, he's been through it all. He's had stress and pressure and all this stuff and made it all work. We want that guy, So in their case, they wanted me because of that background, right? Now, once I got in, I also, as a manager, anytime I was hiring, if like tie goes to the runner in baseball, tie goes to the military person, for me, because I knew I could not put them through any more crap than they went through in the military. Whereas other folks, you may not be as persistent or dedicated or team oriented, maybe, So that was always a tiebreaker for me. And so, and I always would try to sell that to all the companies I worked for. Like, military folks are great. Military, let's go. They're going to be in the right mindset. They're going to run through a wall for you, and just treat them right, and you'll be fine. And so I was always trying to turn that whole discussion, because you're right. Some companies just could not figure it out. Government contractors could, but almost anyone else couldn't. Government contractors could. They kind of knew the game, right? And they could see it, and they had a lot of military. But outside of that, very difficult to do that. But I look at things like, dedication, discipline, all the intangibles, and then whatever technical skill sets they had, or whatever skills period that they did as an enlisted person. But I just find them to be better. Occasionally we get somebody who is so rigid and so just would do what you tell them to do. That may not be a good fit, depending on the position, because you don't really want that. So you had to be careful of that. Those who are just good at taking orders and executing, but that's it. But some companies you need that too. So it just depended,
Yep.
on their mindset, and what they did when they were in the military. But for the most part, I say 99% of the folks I brought in, they just crushed it and did better than anyone else I brought in. Yeah.
That's awesome. And for this journey now, so you did about 5 years at MFS, and then you started kind of hopping, and you hopped your way all the way to COO. Like, were you getting poached at times? Like, how did you? Were you strategic about this? Like, what did that journey?
Oh my God! If only. Oh no. It's like, the 5 years was, so the first 3-year run was incredible, from like 92 to 95, unbelievable. And we went public and combined all the MFS companies, because we had a separate one for data, separate for voice, and separate for building networks and all that. And they combined them all up into one. Until then, it was like, oh my God, it was fantastic. It was as fun as it was working at White House Communications Agency. And a little plug, and you may know this since you lived in the Baltimore area, but my office right now is in 8130 Boone Boulevard. 8100 Boone Boulevard is attached to us. People don't know this, but you can go read books and stuff, and you'll see it all. When the internet was really, really just starting in the early 90s, you had like UUNet and PSINet and MCI, a couple of the bigger telcos, but some other just pure play internet providers. And for them to transfer their customers to another customer, for instance, and I won't get too technical here, but anyway, you had to do like a direct connect to every other new internet provider that was starting up, and that was just not a good way of running a network. So they all got together and said, you know what, we need to have one interconnection point for the entire internet. And it was, and so they developed it, and it was called May East, Metropolitan Area Exchange, May East. First, it was just the May, because there was only one, and it actually was built in 8100 Boone Boulevard right here, and it grew so fast that we then had to go across the street, and we were actually in the garage of the Cable and Wireless building, and everyone wanted to be close to it, because you were thinking about speed, and the shorter distance of the exchange, the faster your customers would experience. It really was the beginning of the whole data center idea. That's why Loudoun County in Virginia is the #1 data center area in the world, because it all started right here in Tyson's Corner, but then we ran out of space. We had to go out there, and now it's ridiculous, of course. I mean, so that the whole internet started there. And although MFS DataNet didn't design, the company I was with didn't design that interconnection, we were part of it. We're sitting at the table with all the internet providers when they came up with it. And then very proud to say that my guys and I put that thing together. Of course, then it would break within a week, because there was so much traffic coming, it was blowing up. And then we built bigger and bigger and bigger, but then pretty soon there wasn't technology big enough, and that was a whole thing too. Fun, exhausting, crazy, but you knew you were doing something special. But that's really the beginning of the whole data center thing, where everyone wants to be close to all the mega connections, so the speed's faster, and that's how it all started. So I got to be part of that. But now you fast forward, then we combine all the companies, and some of the shine's coming off the apple a little bit. But then in 1996, we sold to WorldCom. Enough said, right? We all know that story. So when you say, boy, then you started hopping, oh yeah, none of this was on purpose. It was because things were blowing up and some craziness happening. And before I go into this little part of the story, I have to tell you, as Vistage Chairs here in the area, there's about 15 of us here in the DC area. We get together and have our group meetings just like the Vistage group meetings that we facilitate. And we also rotate who hosts them. So we had to do a host presentation. And this was just interesting how this all played out. I did my presentation and kind of went through some of the stuff I'm telling you and going to tell you because I got my butt kicked and had a lot of things happen along the way. He said, after I was done, he came up to me and said, Brian, you are really resilient. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you got your ass kicked a few times and just kept bouncing back, making good things happen and kept on, keep on keeping on kind of thing. And I just sat there and I said, I never even thought about that. It didn't occur to me. I was just doing it through all that crap. And maybe it was the, work ethic from my parents combined with the military, just get her done kind of thing, And I thought about it. I said, well, God, I never really looked at it that way. Thanks for saying that, though. I appreciate that. Funniest damn thing, about 2 months later, one of my Vistage members asked me to do a TED Talk of sorts, is what he called it. And he said it was for a bunch of nonprofits. That was one of his client segments. And he always did an annual conference. And I said, well, what do you want me to talk about? And he said, I don't know, you decide. And so I was thinking about that. I said, how about resilience, And then I had fun with it because I put together a presentation and I had one slide on there that was repeated about 10 times for the 10 times I got my ass kicked. And just to have some fun with it too, right? So I was going through the story and then when something happened, like, 15 years, you're out, buddy. I have a slide that, this is before AI where I could do it perfectly now, but there was a picture of a little boy going, wah, like crying. And then there was, what did I have then? Oh, then I had a cupcake for a pity party. And, but it's a cupcake, not a big cake, right? But I say a cupcake with candles on it says pity party. And then I've got a calendar with yesterday crossed off and then like another door opening kind of thing. So every time I got my butt kicked, I threw up this slide when I was telling my story. And everyone's, by the third time or second time, they're all laughing at it because it's the same damn thing. But just the message is, yes, you have to grieve. You have to have a pity party, but it's got to be short in duration. And you've got to pick yourself up and start looking at the future and not the past. And in my case, I think, 9 times out of 10 or 10 out of 11 or whatever it was, there's only one time where the thing I went to after was worse. Every other time it's like, oh, damn, this is awesome. And I never would have seen that if I didn't have this other not so fun thing happen, like military, hammered, fell into the whole freaking internet thing. I mean, like, you gotta be kidding me, right? And it's happened all along my career, So I did want to tell you. So WorldCom gets us. Do you know that story? All the stock and stuff I had there went bye-bye. Then I landed with a company, and within 3 months, it got bought out by a roll-up internet commerce type company. This is back in the 90s, right? I'm going, oh my God, I got lucky here again, And at the time I did. Oh my God, Ryan. So and I won't say his name now, but you can look it up. And there was an episode on Dateline, so I'm not making anything. Oh yeah.
No.
The CEO and chairman of the company, it was a public company, by the way, said not only did he believe in extraterrestrials, but he was visited by one. Okay, that's fine, and whatever you believe is fine, but it's not something you say when you're a public company. So then the stock price went down below what they had bought ours for, and we couldn't cash ours yet. We still had, some vesting time, whatever. So, so once again got hammered, and so then, so I left there. And then I joined a company and was all excited. I was some folks I worked with at MFS DataNet, but that was 1999. And of course, in 2000, we had the .com blow up. So all that stock went to zero, So I've had 3 times where hey man, I'm a millionaire. Not so much, not so fast, And then finally, I got a job. And, a lot of my folks couldn't find jobs in the telecom industry or internet industry for the year or so after 2000. It was really ugly because everyone rushed to it. And all of a sudden, there's a lot less jobs. So now it's like, well, A lot of them went to become, selling insurance or wealth management or pick your favorite other vertical. I lucked out, was still doing something interesting that was what I was doing. I got 8% ownership in the company. I'm going, okay, I'm landing on my feet, but I really didn't enjoy. Let's just say the CEO and I we just did things differently. He wasn't unethical, but I didn't like the way he treated people, and including vendors and clients, let alone the staff. But again, it's like I'm making six figures back in 2000 2001 time frame, and I've got 8%. I mean, so just shut up and suck it up, right? But then 9/11 happened, and I was actually downtown when that happened with a couple of guys, and that was life changing, obviously, for a lot of us. And I decided at that point, I was looking in the mirror and saying, "Man, you're not happy. You've been talking about starting your own thing for so many years. You've just been a pansy. So just go do it." As fear was holding me back. And so I just said, you know what, I got to do this. So it was funny. So 9/11 happens. My wife and I are going down to St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. Our happy place still is. We just got back from last week. Yeah, we still go there. Nice. We owned for about 6 years. That's another wham story I can tell you. But we were in the pool. And at first I said, well, honey, I still need to go to St. Croix. We already had an October trip lined up, October '01. I said, I'm going. She goes, oh my God, we're going to fly? What are you, crazy? It was never safer to fly than October of '01, because it was really tight at that point. Yep. So I'm going. I need to go. I need to clear my head, and because I was already having feelings I've got to do something. So she did go. We went down. We're in the pool. And we're talking, and we just decided, she had her own business too, and she got kicked in the teeth a little bit. She had a lot of .com clients providing them services, and a lot of them went bust. And she said, you know what? You helped me start my company back in the early '90s, so we have enough money to pay the mortgage. So just do it. Let's go for it. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Awesome. So she was behind me all the way. So I got to give a lot of credit to her because, losing 6 figures is not just nothing. And so I decided to just go for it. And by December of '01, I had my own business. I got out of the other one. And funniest thing is one of my friends, one of my best friends actually, said he would help me, if I got out. He wanted to live vicariously through me, I believe. And I was excited about me doing this because he never would have. And so I called him up after I decided to do this. And I said, Steve, just want to let you know, I finally did it. And he goes, oh, no, Brian, I can't help you right now. It's too fast. You didn't give me enough time. I said, look, Steve, no, I had to do it. It's fine. If you can't do anything, I don't care. I had to do this for me, right? And he did help. And yep. got me some work. It was on the GovCon side. And I ended up doing GovCon stuff and commercial stuff, and eventually went more of the commercial route because it was more lucrative. And but yeah, that's how the whole thing got going there. And then, starting a small business, you've done it. You're scratching and clawing. It's very, very difficult. It's not for the faint of heart either. So we had some struggles, and I wasn't making 6 figures very quickly. And getting back to where I was, let's put it that way.
All right, quick break, friends. Do you find it impossible to hire and retain top sales talent? Or worse, are you paying insane recruiter fees who are all using outdated hiring processes? Yeah, I was too. At Hunt to Killer, we were spending hundreds of thousands on recruiter agency fees. And after I sold that company in 2025, I started Talent Harbor. And the whole vision here was to make sales recruiting accessible to small and medium-sized businesses, because the organizations that can hire and retain world-class people are the ones that ultimately win. Most organizations rely on things like ZipRecruiter or LinkedIn, and they get hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes. But we find that the best salespeople are already perfectly placed somewhere else. And that's why our approach is to go after them. And we do that through a business model called recruiting as a service. We do not charge commissions. We do not have success fees. We don't have contracts. We don't have long-term engagements. And we become an extension of your team as expert sales recruiters. If you're tired of the same old recruiters and want to actually grow your sales team, check us out at talentharbor.com. That's Talent Harbor, TALENTHARBOR.com. Let's get your next sales superstar hired. And which skills, like when you started this thing, like which skills from your background, was it the technical nature? Was it the soft skills? Like, what do you think kind of helped you the most get this thing off the ground with your kind of first dip into
Great question.
entrepreneurship?
So lucked out. It's all about connections. So not only did I have the connection to at least start throwing some bones my way on the GovCon side, a guy who used to work for me back at MFS DataNet, we had acquired their company at one point. He was at AOL, and he said, "Man, I got some stuff over here too, Brian. Why don't you come and help me out?" So I think it was two things. One, the relationship thing, the personal side, where you make friends and connections and earn their trust, and you're just, high integrity and all that. Super skills, right, and qualities and traits. And they knew that I could get the job done because I was always operations. So I would make sure things would get done. I would never feed you any BS about what we could or couldn't do. I'd lay it out straight for you. Because a lot of times I had salespeople sell something at some of the companies I was with, and then I had to tell the customer, well, here's what you're really going to get. I hope this is okay. That kind of thing. Or get as close as I could to what was sold. So really, I think the technical acumen, yes. And really past experience on getting things done and making things happen and doing the right thing were all the biggest things. Because what I had also decided, and this is a little crazy, and maybe one reason it took a little longer to make the money I needed to make, I decided that if I was going to start a company, I would do some of the billing work, but I did not want to get sucked into billing only and have the whole consultant's dilemma. You're either delivering or you're selling. It's hard to do both. And so I didn't want to do that. So I might do a little PMing or something like that on top of whatever was going on. But for the most part, I wanted to find work and then find the people to do it so I could go find the next opportunity or expand the existing one. And so I was trying to get myself out of the day-to-day, rolling up my sleeves, doing kind of work, knowing that I needed to get there eventually. So why not just try to do that now and not get trapped into that? So therefore, all my relationship skills, people skills, from being operations my entire life, from 1977, I was a computer operator and then a manager of other operators, and so it was always people, right? So it's all the people skills that got me where I am today, actually, all the way through now.
Huh.
Yeah.
When you, because this company, it doesn't look like it was a straight line. It looks like it's very much the S curve where you went through at least 3 iterations. And so probably started growing, and then you're like, there's something else, and started growing again. What were kind of the signals that you were looking at, or the things that you found where you're like, hey, we've got to pivot at this
Signal
point?
was the bank account. No, just kidding.
That's you know what? That's probably the strongest signal that any entrepreneur can look at. That's a great point.
No, so it's, you're right. It is funny because like you have some success and you're building on it, and then you have a little bit of a lull, because the economy does that same kind of thing, right? And we got to just do what you can do with what's going on out there. Then you also have, you're at a client, like I was at AOL, and they had some changes in the people that we were, working with, like CIO level and high level. So then they want to bring in their favorite people and blah, blah, blah. So you're always like trying to play that game to keep things afloat or whatever. One of the biggest things actually is, this is a good story, is at one point I was at a point where I knew I needed either some marketing help or sales help or something, right? Instead of just being me and my relationships. And one of my relationships, he was actually I would say radio personality on WMAL, which, local station here that had big influence back then. And he I know, I told him, I said, he had Saturday and Sunday morning show. I said, David Bird, love him. He helped me out a lot here. I said, David, what would be a cool thing for you to have me on your show, talking a little bit about business or something, every Saturday morning, just, a short segment or whatever. And he turned around on me. He said, Brian, I actually think you've got the goods to carry a whole hour yourself. I said, what? Like your own show. And I said, you are crazy. I said, I'm not doing that. And he kept on talking, and I'm thinking a little bit. And then, now I'm kind of warming up to the idea a little bit. And then he tells me how much money it is, and I won't lie. It was, if I was on every week for a year, it'd be like $120,000 or something like that. I'm going, but then I start thinking, but if I bring on a sales guy or something, I'm going to pay him 120 grand all in for sure, So I said, screw this. I'm going to do something different, And so my different was I knew it was going to provide me one phone call access to anybody in town. I mean, anybody, right? And I was still doing some GovCon then, so I was going to say, well, I'm going to use it to get every CEO, all the major GovCons here, because my thought process was, I'll spend that money to get the one phone call to get him into the interview, not make it a 60 minutes interview, make it obviously something good for them, and then I figured that they would probably, and they all did, turn me on to somebody in the organization when they saw that I was a disabled vet and I had business and all this kind of stuff. So they would put me in touch with whoever in their organization. And to be honest with you, most of them ended up going nowhere because I was just too damn small still. Mm-hmm. And but here's the good thing: I got him on the show. He gave me the person to call. I called them, had a meeting, didn't work out. Versus how many relationships and contacts and shows and networking events to get that no, because I always like to say, and this wasn't for me either, it was from a friend of mine. He used to always say, he was in sales, he said, I want a fast yes most of all. My second choice is a fast no. Because now I can just move on and get you out of my pipeline and I'm done, right? He said, because sometimes those long drawn out yeses, by the time you have all the meetings and spend all that time and energy for months and months and months, finally get the gig, hell, the margin you make on it almost didn't pay for all the work you did up front, right? And the time and energy and cycles burning and all that. And I said, I love that. So that's one thing I thought about with I decided to do that, and I did it for 2.5 years, and to make the final connection. Oh, I did have some fun too. So then. Sandy Weil, who used to be the CEO of Citigroup and American Express for a while, and then Carly Fiorina from HP and presidential candidate. They both wrote books. And what I found when I had the show is anyone who was writing a business book wanted to get on the show. So I ended up having them on my radio show, which, if nothing else, was a little bit of ego thing, I guess, just that, hey, I get to meet them, But the bigger thing was I could use it as marketing, saying, hey, guess who I had on my show, and just to get my name out there so that people at least talk to me about whatever I want to do from a business perspective. So it all worked out. And they were just both amazing, amazing people. And they just were so kind and everything to me. And I worry with those stories over a drink whenever we see each other, right? I won't eat too much of that time now. Just say they were very prepared when they came. And I learned a lot from their preparation and how they handled me and how I got to tell the story now. So when Carly Fiorina was coming, we had a tornado warning here in the area, and I said, "Oh, she's not going to make it. She's not coming. There's no way." And don't you know, she showed up, and she had to run through the rain, and she had rain droplets on her coat. And I had a picture taken of the two of us, and you can see some of the rain pellets if you look very closely. So, and I just thought so much of her for doing that for my little radio show, and I know she was doing it for her campaign and everything else too, but or for her book, I should say, and eventually campaign. But I thought that was fantastic. And Sandy Weil had done so much research on me. He knew my entire life when he walked into the studio, so that was awesome as well. So,
do you think it's like the CEOs were a little nervous going on live from like a nerves standpoint, or do you think that this is their publicist like, no, there's too much risk with having you on a mic in front of a live audience?
Yeah, for the bigger companies, it was probably more that the risk, because it surprised me that some CEOs were nervous about coming on, but there were some that didn't have that staff yet. They were in a size where they actually had a corporate communications lead, and so they were just nervous, I think, about live and screwing up, because not. Just because you're running a company doesn't necessarily mean you're super comfortable in a live situation, in front of a lot of people. There's a lot of small business owners who rarely, maybe never, get in front of a big group of people, except maybe they're all hands meeting, that kind of thing, because they might be, introverts, or they, for whatever reason, just doesn't matter. But they're just not comfortable. It's still, people fear that more than death, So I get it. So I was surprised though.
And how did this journey take you to becoming a Vistage Chair? Were you a Vistage member when you were leading your company? Like, how did this all come about?
Yes, well, you never can look back. So another one of those moments where I got my butt kicked was when the recession hit. As we were going into the recession, I wasn't feeling the pain like everyone else was. And I was thinking,
Hmm.
well, maybe it's because I'm doing these big technology solutions for companies like cable or cable companies like Comcast and Time Warner Cable, and they don't need to worry about it, as you think. And so I was good for longer than most people were. But then come late 2009, finally, um, they just all had to make some business decisions, which was to stop all the really crazy cool things we were doing for them and say we need to stop this and bring it in house because we've stopped other in house projects and we're just cramping down a little bit and watching our pennies. And so I didn't have a big company. I was like pushing $6 million, but it was high margin. And then all of a sudden I'm a $500,000 company. Like in a span of 2 months.
Yep.
Worse than that though, because I'm sometimes too nice. I was thinking this was going to be more of a still a recession, small R, not capital R, great recession. So I hung on to some folks too who weren't billing, and they were all six-figure people. So ate more of it there. So to your point about Vistage member, I look back saying I use this when I'm talking to potential members now. It's like, I didn't join a group. I visited a group, and I was,
Hmm.
I'm a pretty humble guy all in all. But I'm going, I'm kind of doing really well right now. Do I really need this? Well, what the hell did I know? And I know deep in my heart that as the recession was coming, everyone in that room would have been saying, here's what I'm doing to adjust, here's what I'm doing to adjust, and all that. And they would have just called me out big time, I'm sure, and just slapped me silly and said, dude, what are you doing? But I didn't have that, and I just kept on going. And then there were some other things involved too. And so I didn't do it, and I got, all of a sudden I was going, oh my God, now what? And to make matters worse, my wife had her own business. She got hammered by the recession. Mine got hammered by the recession. At that point, my wife's largest customer was on St. Croix, so we had bought a villa there. We rented it out when we weren't there, but used it when she was going there for business instead of paying, in high season, $700-800 a month or $1,000 a month on a room. So we
Yep.
bought a place there, and that was like a third business, and we rented it out. And when no one was traveling, because everyone's watching their pennies, so we basically had three businesses all cratering all at the same time. And it's like, oh my God, it was that was probably the roughest stretch out of everything. I must say that was the roughest time for us emotionally and financially and everything else. And it was about that time I said, well, what little business I had left with my company, which I call it Croix Connect, by the way, for St. Croix.
I saw that. Yeah, it all made sense as soon as you got into that. I was like, I'm tracking.
Exactly. Yeah, we were in a pool in St. Croix, and that I named the company Croix Connect, making connections, making things work. and I started thinking, well, what the heck am I going to do? The work I had left was more consultative, even though it was with Fortune 100s. And I said, maybe I should do more of the small business thing and maybe do this, team building thing. But I like this company Vistage. They seem to be the 800-pound gorilla because I'm not known for doing business coaching, executive coaching. I like the group thing. It made sense to me instead of just coaching. And I said, I need to latch on to them. And it was funny, even back then, 2009, I'm searching on their website, and next thing you know, I get a phone call. So they were already capturing data and everything, and called me. I said,
Yeah.
what the heck? This is weird. Back then, before now it's commonplace, right? We know that.
Yeah.
And I said, this sounds interesting. And I said, well, let's go. And I started one. And so out of getting my butt kicked once again, the door opens again. And
No.
starting a group is very difficult. You have to find 8 CEOs to say yes at the same time, right? And that's not easy to get a group going because that's like the minimum to get things going. So finally got through that. I think I really in earnest tried to probably November, December timeframe. I got it going in February, which is pretty quick, but it was rough. And then building that practice up, added a key exec group, a senior exec group, one level down. About 3 years later, coming back from Chair World, where I got all fired up and excited about what's going on. Went through a time where I started a Baltimore group. I actually took over a couple. Wasn't optimal. Ended up in 2018 starting another local CEO group here. Then I had my two CEO groups pushing me to start a second key exec group, which, thank you very much. And I said, if you guys can fill it up with the first 8, I'll do it. And they did. And then Vistage has 2 other programs, advancing leader, mid-level folks, and then emerging leader, more first-time leader kind of thing. And so I started with those 2. So I went up to 6 groups and was doing that for a good 4 or 5 years. Just recently, I decided to not do any more emerging leader or advancing leader and just stick with my 2 CEO groups and my 2 senior exec groups, just to kind of watch the time and spend more time with my wife and things like that. More life decision. But at this point, I could see me doing 4 groups for the next, well, it could be forever. I mean, until my brain goes, my members say, "Hang up your spikes, Roberts, you suck," I could do this, and that's the beauty of this, and that's why I feel so blessed now. One, I don't feel like I'm working as it is. I put in hours with one-on-ones with all my members and my 4 group meetings per year or per month, but it's not work. I love it, because they've all become close to me. I care about them, obviously, and I love creating those group environments where there's such great collaboration going on in those meetings, and we're all helping each other, and it's just fabulous, right? So it's not work at all. So as long as I am able to, I will keep on doing this for as long as I can do it. There's chairs out there who are in their 70s, in their 80s. We even have some in their 90s. There's a 95-year-old chair who has 3 groups down in Florida, and his name escapes me right now. Amazing. But part of it is that purpose, that energy you get from all the people and seeing what's going on in business and problem solving helps keep the mind sharp, right? I mean, genetics plays big into it, obviously. But I think if you keep those neurons firing here, by being a Vistage Chair and helping all these people out and having a purpose, I can do it for as long as my health hangs in there. I could see myself at some point, 5, 10, 15 years from now, maybe go down to 3 or 2 groups, but I'm going to keep the groups going as long as I can provide value to my members.
Love it. Okay, so Brian, someone just listened to this entire thing and they're like, I need to learn more about Vistage. That I love Brian. We have a similar background like you and I, and I want to talk to him about joining his Vistage group. I guess this is kind of a 2-parter. Number 1 is, what do you look for in new members? And then number 2 is, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, the getting a hold part is brian.roberts@vistagechair.com. So pretty easy, brian.roberts@vistagechair.com. And as far as what I'm looking for, it's really a CEO. Here's the other beautiful thing about Vistage, right? For me, not only are CEOs people who start businesses like a little crazy and like amazing people, those who know they don't know it all and want to join a group like Vistage to be their private advisory board is even like the 1% of the 1%, right? And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those who are real, who can handle creative criticism, have creative conflict and handle criticism. If they come across like a know-it-all, I said, no, you're not going to work for me because you don't know it all, and you think you know it all, so you're a problem, and I just don't want to deal with you. I also look at them like, okay, is this somebody I want to spend time with? Because I'm going to have a one-on-one once a month, and I'm going to have them in a group meeting. Man, if I don't like you, I can't get along with you. What the heck do I want you in my group for? Plus, I am very, very, very careful about screwing up the dynamic of my existing groups, right? So if I say you're just not going to fit into either one of my groups, at the CEO level or senior exec level, it's just, I can't do it. Maybe some other chair or whatever would be a better fit for you or another group, but for me, you're not going to work for my group, But I do think every business owner out there needs to have a peer group, whether it's Vistage or somebody else. I don't care, one of our competitors, but you got to do something because you need that support. It is lonely at the top. So that's really what I look for is authenticity and the fact that they're willing, they're lifelong learners, and they don't think they know it all. Is the biggest thing. Because I don't need. You have to have a little bit of ego to be a business owner, but I don't need that kind of ego.
Yep. I was just in my monthly meeting 2 days ago. I'm in Gary Brenglass's group out here in LA. And we just had a new member join. And so Gary went around the room and was like, talk a little bit about your experience or why you've been here. And I talked about, for me personally, I agree with you. I think there's three things that I really wish I had with my first company. My first company bankrupted. I was actually going through the Seaman to Admiral program at the time. So I was at the University of Maryland, grew very fast, bankrupted. And I wish I had this kind of knowledge back then, but the three things are: number one, a peer group. So somebody that you can bounce ideas, everybody holds each other accountable. People have been there, done that, and they can kind of show you where those landmines might be. Number two, a coach. And you get both of those things in Vistage, which is incredible. And then number three is some sort of operating system. So like something to help help you run, and then something to help the business run. And those have kind of been like the three things those were the three changes I made after Run for Your Lives bankrupted, and why a lot of other things have been pretty successful. So, Brian, I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to come on, share your experience, the 15 years in the Air Force, the trials and tribulations through the .com, the bubble, everything there. And then I thought the other thing that was really interesting is people on the outside looking in on entrepreneurship, I think they always see the success story. So they see the person at the top and they're like overnight success or like straight line to that. And I've never had a conversation where that's been the case. And it's this constant evolution. It's this constant iteration. And I loved how you mapped that out. Like it looked like there were three distinct inflection points that you had with your company. So short-winded, I just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to come on, and we need to see each other in real life as well.
No, I'd love that. And one last thing, Ben Horowitz wrote a book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and he also did a post which is called The Struggle, which I printed off and I sent to everybody who wants to start their business. But I'll put it in my meeting booklets once a year or so as well. And it just shows that if you're running a business, you're going to get your butt kicked. All this stuff's going to happen. Food's not going to taste good. You can't sleep. Your family doesn't understand. No one cares. But then at the end it says, and the struggle is where greatness comes from. And I just love that. And if you can't handle all the part up here, then you're not going to get to the greatness part.
It's certainly not for everybody. I'll tell you that much. Cool. Brian, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome. Yeah. As you can see, you just pull my string on business and away I go. So love it.
It's great. It's awesome.